Welcome back to Love, Money, Rock and Roll. We left off on a Monday, after Kagome disappeared into the night, and came back. Let's get into it. One of the first thoughts I had in the morning was how long it would take for Kyosuke to spread the word that he'd met Kagome at my place, and if that was my only problem. Kyosuke seeing her grandfather meant the store would be painted in totally different colors by his telling. Completely Lovecraftian colors that have nothing to do with reality. His story's spreading was scarier than the chance that the actual truth might come out. Breakfast was ready when I entered the kitchen, which buoyed my spirits somehow. Good morning. Kagome sat at the table with her grandfather by her side. Another chair sat across from them. Against my will, this setup was leaving me the hot seat, like the accused in a courtroom. Good morning, Nikolai. Did you sleep well? Pretty well, thank you. What about you? It's not easy to fall asleep in a new place. Old people generally don't sleep well. He smiled and his expression was so full of humility that it made me feel a bit uncomfortable. He was supposed to be at the same age as Kobayashi-jun, although I only had the very vague idea on how to tell the ages of people way older than me. Still, the head of the Kobayashi Corporation looked and acted with much more confidence. No offense to Moriki-san, but you could say that his life was at its nadir, while Kobayashi-jun gave the impression of a brisk old man still full of energy. What about you? Did you sleep well? Asked Kagome somewhat ironically. Well enough. She was drinking coffee, the smell of it bringing back memories that seemed like they didn't belong to me. The instructive tone of my mother, with the detached expression on my father's face, the monotonous hum of the television, and the noise of the vacuum cleaner. When did I last use the vacuum cleaner? Casting these thoughts away, I focused on the food. No. You should vacuum your house. You lazy. Thank you. Everything was delicious. You are welcome. Kagome replied coldly. And now we need to go to school. Only then did I notice she was wearing a uniform. I see you saved what's most important from the fire. What do you mean? The uniform. Of course not. I bought a new one yesterday. Ah, that's where you went. What did you think? Didn't think a thing. I snapped back up and stood up. I don't know, I just thought you went and burned someone alive. We walked out of the house together, but I stopped at the gate. Maybe it'd be better if we went to school separately. Afraid of being seen together? I'm not, but... Kyosuke must have told anyone, so there may be all kinds of rumors going about us at school. For example? Well, for example... Of course, Kyosuke had a much more vivid imagination than I did, that you're pregnant and your grandfather's here to supervise our engagement. Kagome blushed and then giggled. If only your Kyosuke knew my grandfather. He's the one he'd have to be supervised. And he doesn't. And what Kyosuke doesn't know, he tends to make up. Even if that's the case, I'm not too scared. Good for you. Truth be told, I had zero interest in catching weird looks and becoming the subject of gossip. I had more important things to deal with and I didn't need the extra attention. So, do we have a deal? I understand what you mean, but I'm not gonna go toe the line high to let them control my life. Do you understand the concept of a reasonable compromise? We aren't towing any lines, we're just not trying to make anything worse. Common sense? If you don't want to go to school with me, you don't have to. You don't have to go to school at all. What do I care? She turned around abruptly and walked away. After 5 minutes, I decided she was far enough ahead of me. It was quiet in Himitsu's house. I wonder how she'd react when she found out I had another girl living with me. I walked to school slower than usual, changed my clothes, and went up to the second floor. It seemed like nobody was looking at me with particular attention, but everything changed as soon as I entered the classroom. Kagome was sitting behind her desk, looking out the window, but it looked like someone had set up an invisible wall separating my new roommate from the rest of the class. The guys reacted like they'd seen someone from the opposing team in their locker room, while the girl started whispering frantically. I walked to my desk and gave Kyosuke a sullen look. He pretended not to notice me. Actually, it's stupid to be angry with a nightingale for singing. That's just how the bird is. I was more annoyed by the need to put on an act, pretend. So I was living with a girl. So what? What's the big deal? It's not like they're alone. I mean, the grandfather's there. I could have understood, but they weren't even my friends. Except maybe for... Michael approached me. Hey, Nick, I don't want to start the conversation, but it's better if you hear it from me. I'm listening. People are saying you impregnated Iwamura-san, got her kicked out of her house, and now she's living with you. Maybe I shouldn't have unarrested my imagination after all. It was almost the story I told Kagome half an hour ago. Kyosuke? I asked in a dull voice. He didn't reply, he just looked at me sympathetically. Kyosuke? I repeated. I don't know for sure. He swears he has nothing to do with it. In any case, Nick, you should know I don't believe it. He sounded like Gollum trying to persuade Frodo and Sam that they can trust him. Just tell me, how'd you find out about it? The entire class knows. I see. I don't think it was Kyosuke, at least not deliberately. Thanks, I heard you. Somehow, my initial goodwill towards him had disappeared without a trace. Maybe it's because the whole school would find out about her new living condition. And even if not, I wouldn't feel guilty about that. But they'd only learn what the bare truth was, not wrapped in Kyosuke's bountiful imagination. I knew he could have spiced it up a little bit, sure, but this was that bit way beyond the pale. I barely managed to wait until the end of our first class. The entire time, Kyosuke tried to so desperately not look in my direction that he deserved an award just for effort. Finally, the bell rang and I dashed to his desk. Let's go and talk, my dear friend. I grabbed Kyosuke by the back of his jacket and dragged him into the hallway. Nick, I know what you're thinking, but it wasn't me. He immediately started offering excuses. Good, that you know, save us some time. I swear, I haven't told anyone about you and, well, Mura-san. Well, I mean, wait, me and Mura-san. I don't know, Nick. I saw you together, but that doesn't mean that we what? Her house burnt down and you just offered her help. Or to save her, so to say. Anyone in your place would... I had to at least be honest with myself, it wasn't likely. But Kyosuke didn't know about the events of the last couple of weeks. Most people in his position would have come to the wrong conclusion. Look, I know this seems strange from outside. I'm letting a classmate I barely talked to before live at my home. And her grandfather too. But she has her own circumstances, and so do I. In any case, nobody gave you the right to gossip about it. Nick, I swore I haven't told anyone. Haven't told anyone probably means you told a couple friends and asked them to keep a secret. Not telling anyone means telling nobody. And when would have had the time? It hasn't even been a day. Rumors spread quickly. Nick, I'm serious. Could anyone else have seen us? I couldn't exclude the possibility, but it was hard to imagine any of my classmates. Was it Himitsu? So who could it be? You said it yourself, hasn't been a day. I don't know. What about Himitsu? Have you asked her? Himitsu. I said automatically, the name echoing disturbingly in my mind. Himitsu can keep her mouth shut. Unlike some people, she hasn't even seen... Even if she had, she'd talk to me first. I couldn't imagine her spreading the rumor. Human perception is so strange. I never thought she was a bad person, but here I was ready to attribute her with something she'd never do. It's not Himitsu, and not me. Catherine or Himitsu, one of those two. I highly doubt it was Ellie. Who could it be then? Why do you assume it was me when there's no other suspects? Because you miraculously dropped by my place and saw what you saw. I'm not angry at you. I just need the truth. If I'd really told anyone, I would have told you so already, don't you think? I guess. And then the pregnancy, I asked in a softer voice. It's not just someone saying that they saw Iwamura at my place. Maybe someone wanted to hurt you. Perhaps he was right. And if I thought about who I'd consider my enemies, and then Kagome appeared from the corner, walking straight at us. There you are. She immediately jumped on Kyosuke. Mind telling me if I look pregnant? Kagome, wait. I tried to stand up for my friend, as I wasn't so sure about his guilt anymore. Nico-san, I can handle this myself. She cut me off. So answer me, what were you thinking? Kyosuke was a sorry sight. I've already explained to Nick that it wasn't me. It was pure coincidence that we met at this place. I haven't told a word about it, I swear. Why is he looking away? Yomura-san, I don't believe in coincidences. What else am I supposed to get you to believe me? He looked away from her and to me, looking for support. I really think that... And you call Nico-san's friend? Ready to sell anyone for 15 minutes of fame. Even if Kyosuke actually was at fault here, he hadn't done it out of malice. Wait, hold your horses. And you, Nikolai, you're probably to let anyone walk all over you. No wonder you nurse such a snake up your chest. You got me enough, you're taking it too far. Nick, what did she mean? Gyosei looked genuinely scared. She's gonna ambush you after school and stab you in the back with a knife. On the other hand, if Kagome really is pregnant, she wouldn't risk the child. Then she'll send her grandfather after you instead, and he's a black belt in karate. Don't be deceived by his feeble appearance. So you're joking, right? What do you think? I asked wearily. She can be very persuasive when she wants to be. That she can. So she really won't do anything to me? He kept worrying. Calm down, she won't. I'll see to it. But we still don't know who's spreading these rumors and why. Someone must benefit from it. Benefit from it. I returned to the thought that I had been arrested by Kagome's appearance. Asakura? She hadn't been at school this morning. That means nothing, I guess. I wanted to ask something else, but the bell rang. Asakura wasn't by the second period either. She would have spread the rumor over the phone. I was sure she had enough connections at school to do so, but I just couldn't sit and do nothing. I could talk to Ellie. I barely waited for the break and hurried to the old music room. I hoped Ellie didn't believe the rumors. Fortunately, Ellie hadn't changed her pattern and was there today too. Howdy, I greeted her politely. I thought you wouldn't come, she replied familiarly. Sorry for yesterday. Although, you know, I have nothing to apologize for. I haven't done anything wrong. Yeah, you're right. The sadness in her voice sounded unusual, but I still need to talk to you. You probably heard about what they're saying about Iwamura and I. I have. You don't believe it? Iwamura didn't look present yesterday. She smiled, but it was like she was a defendant in court who, despite long fighting to overturn her conviction, it had finally realized how powerless she was to change it. I wanted to jerk about it being Kagome's pregnancy being in its early stages, but I changed my mind at the last moment. I'm glad, but I'd really like to know who's spreading these rumors. That's what I wanted to ask you. Maybe Kawashima said something? You think it's Mary? She asked very calmly, unexpected. Well, considering her relationship with her, and to be honest, I've also had some disagreements with her. I don't know, Nick. Everyone was talking about it. Marie as well, but I have no idea who started it. I see. I drawled, moving a bit closer to the piano, but suddenly felt like I was crossing an invisible line and returned to the door. What are you so worried about? You and Iwamura love each other. What do you have to care? Why do you have to care about other people's opinions? Love? I exclaimed. There's nothing between us. It just turned out like this. Right. You let a perfect stranger live with you. There's nothing to be ashamed of, Nick. I'm not ashamed of anything. And the feeling was nothing like the one you'd have when being pushed to get together with the ugliest girl in class. If there was something between us, I would have told you. I just couldn't say no to her after everything that happened. Her father went missing, her house burned down, and it was also their only source of income. Yeah, we have a lot in common, I won't deny, but love. You're explaining yourself like I'm accusing you of a crime. I guess I was trying too hard to justify myself. I have nothing more to say. I understand that you're no longer interested in playing bass? Ah, right about that. It's just not the best time right now. I'll think about it when everything gets sorted. No need. Music isn't something you should be forced to do. Yeah, but... I understand, Nick. No worries. I'm not upset. Kagome is just more important to you now. Only then that I knew Ellie was constantly calling Kagome Iwamura-san. She never referred to her politely when talking alone with me before. I'm telling you, I get it. Since she got it, what was the point in arguing? Fine. I really doubt that I can help you two about finding her father, but feel free to turn to me if you need help. I could see both sadness and determination on her face, like she made an important but very hard decision. Thank you. I said to no one when I was left alone. Huh. I doubt that would have happened if you're going for Ellie. Perhaps somewhere deep inside I could guess what Ellie felt. Except that with the hand I had at the moment, an ace would be too much. I didn't even want to think about it. It seemed like our acquaintance would end here, and that would be better for everybody. She really couldn't help finding Kagome's father, but she was capable, even if unintentionally, of making the situation worse. I looked at Asakura's empty desk. If they'd managed to get away with everyone up to this point, spreading a rumor would barely warrant mentioning, that was for sure. Anyway, if Kagome and her grandfather left for Hokkaido, this incident would be quickly forgotten. Teenagers yearn for new experiences and have trouble with consistency. The thought I'd never see Kagome again made me feel uncomfortable, as if I was losing a close friend or... In the end, I wanted to get to the truth too, and the real reason for my parents' death. I was going to talk to Kagome during our next break, but our inescapable English teacher took her away immediately. Michael approached me. Do you have plans after school? Not that anything I can think of. You want to walk home together? I got something to talk about. It should take 15 minutes or so. Okay. Once classes were over, we left school and casually headed for my house. Michael was quiet. Well, I'm all ears. Have you found out who's spreading rumors about you and Iwamura-san? I'm still on it. So you have suspects? Asakura, Kawashima, who else would be arrested? Do you have any evidence? Even if I did, what of it? You can't put people behind bars for being a-holes in Japan. But you don't think it's Kyosuke's fault anymore? I guess not, I don't know. The Larde has a big mouth and all, but pregnancy? When will we have time for that? Just yesterday, I had no idea what Iwamura's first name was, but now you know. Do you think there's something between us? Is that the case? No, it's not. The restaurant she lived burned to the ground. She has to stay at my place for a time I agreed, that's it. I see. And that's what you want to talk to me about? Not just that, I just wanted to inform you that I've cast her out. Inform? I smirked, but his information echoed with a dull pain somewhere inside. What did she say? She agreed. Well, you aren't gonna get any congratulations from me, but let's say I'm happy for you. I just wanted you to know that you did your best to make it right. I get it. My blatant sarcasm rang in the air. I didn't mean anything like that. Sure thing. Michael's latest attempt to make himself seem like an honest friend didn't make me as wildly indignant as the last one. What was the point in berating a person when they don't understand what they're doing wrong? And was I really the one judge wrong from right? Alright, I don't want to discuss Catherine. I'm just too preoccupied for that. You see what's going on around me, right? Michael stopped and offered his hand. Take care, Nick. You too. I responded hesitantly. And yet, this conversation woke up feelings I really could live without at the moment. I wonder how Catherine would react to the rumor I'd gotten Kagome pregnant. I hadn't looked at Catherine once the entire day. I seemed to have even forgotten she existed. Kagome occupied not only my house, but my thoughts. She made her problems mine and forced me to look at things from new angles, including things that had seemed unshakable to me. Of course it was clear that Catherine wouldn't believe such nonsense, but there's no smoke without fire. You wouldn't spread rumors if there wasn't any substance at all. I don't think Catherine did it now. I'm really thinking it's Himitsu or one of the government agencies. But not Kobayashi. The KGB wants us alive. Maybe there's more? I don't. We like to think that they can still be used somehow. Coming up with absurd uses for an old pan or a broken pair of scissors. The irony is, we totally forget their existence after a minute or two after finally throwing them away. Of course, I didn't want to compare my feelings to Catherine to an old pan, but in the sense, the analogy was kind of appropriate. Ah, hello, old man. Sorry, Nikolai, I couldn't find anything to do. I'm used to working at the restaurant during the day, but now, it's alright, I understand. I suddenly annoyed despite myself. You're holding up just fine. Once you reach my age, you understand that all material things come and go. Dude, I'm 22, 23, and I already understand that. I'm ready to lose everything in my life. That's what it means when you mentally, die. Pretty much. But still, I feel sorry for the restaurant. Kagome still hasn't come back from school. I haven't seen her. The old man replied hesitantly. He had it good. Wouldn't have noticed it even if war broke out. Would you like to have lunch? I don't think Kagome would be upset if we eat without her. His rice tasted somehow dusty, or maybe the sense of senility confused my olfactory receptors. Doctor will turn off my pain inhibitors. The restaurant wouldn't have lasted long without a chef like this. That made me respect Kagome and her contribution to the family business even more. Moriki was eating slowly and looked like a meditating Buddhist monk. I didn't want to interrupt his thoughts, but also couldn't bear to remain silent. Kagome must have been helping a lot at the restaurant, right? Oh yeah, she takes every job very seriously. When she started living with us 3 years ago, Kagome couldn't cook at all. Can you believe that? Barely, to be honest. After all, Himitsu had been cooking for as long as I knew her. She would spend many hours in the kitchen, in the evenings, after work, and in the early morning until she learned. That sounds like her. I realized that she never wanted to spend her entire life over a stove or serving food to tipsy fishermen. But her mother, Yuna-san, left us too early. What happened to her? Kagome-chan will tell you herself when the time comes. When the time comes sounds pretty menacing, but I couldn't keep prying. Thank you, Moriyuki-san. It was delicious. I'll wash the dishes. Thank you, Nikolai, for everything. The old man got back to his TV. While I went to my room, it was a golden novel, The Spire. I don't even remember what got the book from. People unrestrained by a certain external force, be it law, religion, or morals, sooner or later degrade to a primal form. To what extent were Kawashima and Asakura similar with the protagonist of The Lord of Flies? Unlike Ellie, I doubt anyone expected anything great from them. Consequently, there were no pressure from above, and their worth removed any pressure from below. Of course, their parents might have provided a moral compass instead, but judging by their behavior, they had failed at that. But for the time being, we were all shipwrecked together on the same island, a school for rich kids. And I felt as if we were worshipping a pig's head on a stake, expecting to get pleasures in return, but more importantly, reassurance and security. Evening came, but Kagome still hadn't returned. I began to worry and was pacing from room to room. When you sleep like this all day, it's hard to fall asleep at night. Do you know where she is? I hope it'll be found. You know, when Shinji was about your age, I was so happy they enjoyed studying and I was planning to go into science, but in the end, was it worth it? I knew Kagome-chan wouldn't want to run the restaurant after my death either. The whole thing was nothing but trouble. I couldn't drop it, of course, but why would the young ones need it? And now there's no restaurant anymore. We simply ate in silence. If I knew where to find Kagome, that's what I'd be doing right now. Why should I be worried for her? I already let them stay at my place, and I was going to allow her to rule my life. Someone was knocking loudly on the door. Where have you been? We were worried. Kagome's standing on the porch and looked tired. Who's we? I was and Moriyuki-san. I'm sure grandfather didn't even notice I wasn't there. To some extent, she was correct. Will you let me in? I stepped aside, allowing her to pass. Kagome-chan. The old man had begun to fall asleep again. Since you're home, I'm going to sleep. Good night. He stood up slowly, his joints cracking like he was about to come apart, and slowly dragged himself to the room he shared with Kagome. You know, we have a saying, don't bring your rules to a stranger's house. While you live here, please be so kind as to tell me when you'll be back. It's just natural, after all, you don't even have any keys. My granddad's home. Kagome replied angrily and walked to the stove where the leftover of dinner were waiting for her in a pot. I see you weren't starving. It's not my stomach you should be worried about. Nikolai, stop being hysterical. I was looking for my father. Fine, but you could have warned me. I guess I could. Kagome sighed and put the lid back over the pot, but didn't think it was necessary. I saw you leaving school with that American. Michael. His name is Michael. Whatever. She was cold and even hostile. Something happened while she was looking for her father, but I'd gotten too fired up I couldn't stop. Listen, if there's something you aren't happy about, no one's keeping you here. We'll be leaving soon. And for now, I'm sorry, but I'm very tired and going to sleep. What happened? Well, did you find anything? Nothing is something too. Kagome was looking at me attentively, not moving from her place. I seem to remember someone asking for my help just recently. That was the case for me, but Kagome... Yes, sorry, I should have warned you. Her mood suddenly softened. I tried to find Nishimura-san, but to no avail. I imagine so. He turned pale as soon as he saw the papers. By the way, the papers... Kagome didn't reply, just lowered it. I see. You should have left them at my place, I almost said. Their overall situation seemed to be grim. Kagome couldn't stand alone in the might of the corporation. Did she realize that? Nikolai, can I go to sleep? Of course, I'm not holding you. In reality, I wanted to ask her a lot more, but the right questions refused to come to my mind. Good night, then. Good night. Kagome hesitated. What do you want for breakfast? Maybe it's not obvious, but I'm grateful for what you're doing for us. And there's no way I can pay you back, but I can at least cook. I don't need anything special. It's not like I expect you to make borscht. What's that? Well, it's a soup. It includes red beet, cabbage, carrots, meat broth, and maybe something else. I don't even know. Borscht. Kagome tried to pronounce it, a difficult word for a Japanese person. She smiled and went to bed. She closed the door to her room while I remained in the kitchen. Could things have gone differently? In other words, could I have closed the door on Kagome and her grandfather as they smelled of smoke? Leave them on the street and just go on with my life without a second thought, forgetting about that unfortunate incident. Kagome basically left me no choice. After all, I did have a lot of free space at home, and she asked for nothing more than that. I guarantee one of these endings, you're just allowed to shut the door on him. I guarantee that's a choice, but obviously that's not going to lead to a good ending. To an extent, the situation resembled my relationship with Himitsu, but with her, I could always lock the door from the inside, pretend to be sick, or just ignore her. But it's not so easy to ignore someone you live with. Moriyuki was in fact a lovely old man who wasn't causing me any trouble. As for his granddaughter, I still couldn't decide how I was supposed to feel about her and how I wanted to. Under different circumstances, we would have graduated in half a year without saying a dozen words to each other and would never see each other again. Of course, me meeting Ellie was also random to agree, but at least we had something in common, that was being music. In case of Kame, we were only connected by the fact that Kobayashi Corporation had caused us so much pain. Of course, it could well be to the rumor that I had got her pregnant. Whether I wanted or not, it made me imagine how my life would pan out differently. Don't think about a polar bear, huh? Or was it a monkey? My head is full of albino animals. I went to bed. (22/09/1987). We haven't heard from Himitsu. I dreamed that Kagame was kidnapped and a ransom had been demanded from me. Of course, in the morning I forget the details. The only thing I remembered was that there was someone else with me at home, a girl. It wasn't really a nightmare, more like a thriller full of suspense than a real nightmare. Unfortunately, the ending of the dream was wiped out with the first rays of autumn's sun, and Kagame's fate remained unclear. Opened my eyes and smelled something strange, a familiar scent from the kitchen. No freaking way. I jumped off the bed and ran out of my room. Now I'm confused. Oh, it's you. Nikolai? Kagome grew embarrassed. What? She made a very vague gesture indicating there was something wrong with me. I looked down and realized I was standing in the middle of my kitchen with just my underwear. Sorry. I knew a Russian many years ago before the war. He used to cook a great borscht with those garlic buns. Pampushki, I suggested. Yeah, probably. We sat at the kitchen table eating borscht for breakfast. For me, the choice of dishes was becoming a regular occurrence. Of course, the Kagome soup was different from Himitsu's, and was at most only a cousin to a normal borscht, but the taste was recognizable and good too. Where did you find the ingredients? Well, I won't argue red beet wasn't easy to find, but the rest can be found in any grocery store. How much money do you spend on that? I'll pay it back. I won't say no to that. Kagome smiled. I was about to go to my room and grab my wallet when someone knocked at the door. I immediately realized there was no common guest and looked at Kagome, but she seemed just as scared and perplexed as I was. I had opened the door. I summoned all the courage I had and walked out into the hall. Huh. The impatient guest turned out to be Kagemaru. Come on, Kobayashi Dono wishes to speak to you. Can I have a few minutes at least? No, put your shoes on and let's go. Nikolai. See you at school. I told her quickly, put on my shoes and followed him. What's this about? Kobayashi Dono will tell you everything. He grit his teeth. The drive seemed unbearably long to me, and it wasn't just because of a weekday traffic. Unsurprisingly, Kagemaru kept silent, and I was afraid to start a conversation. It was clear something happened. My hands were shaking. I felt cramped and choky on the back seat as if suffocating. Finally, Kagemaru stopped at the car at the main entrance. A few minutes later, I was standing in the gigantic office of the head of the corporation. I cannot say I'm happy about it. He looked focused serious. Unfortunately, I haven't invited you for a pleasant talk this time either. Elizabeth has been kidnapped. He said and looked at me, clearly expecting some kind of reaction. Kidnapped? Was all I managed to force out? Do you know anything about this? Of course, the old man wasn't in a joking mood, but it still sounded like he was reporting a decrease in quarterly profit at a board assembly, rather than the kidnapping of his very young granddaughter. I don't, I swear. It'd be strange to hear something different from you, but it's the truth. Elizabeth didn't return home yesterday, and in the morning, her so-called kidnappers left a note in the mailbox saying she'd been kidnapped. Naturally, they asked us not to inform the police and to wait further instructions. Who could have done this? Like any serious businessman, I have plenty of competitors, but kidnapping children is against the implied code of honor. If we use every possible means to achieve our objectives, the collateral damage would be far too high for everyone. I understand that, and so do the others. That's why I'm also positive it's someone outside that circle. That's why, Nikolai, I started to suspect people Elizabeth has met recently. I was at home the whole day yesterday, and I have witnesses to confirm that. That's good. The old man leaned back in his armchair. Why would I? I'm not a detective or forensic scientist psychiatrist. Besides, I have no desire to get inside someone else's head, especially that of an impulsive teenager. Otherwise, Kagamara probably would have been asking the questions. You should have understood that I don't know her that well. Sure, she invited me to play in her band, but my circumstances have changed, and it was quite reckless of you to deny such a generous offer. Maybe, but for now I don't have time for music. A classmate of mine turned to me for help. Her restaurant burned down, is that correct? Obviously, he knew without me having to tell him. So that's right, yesterday the whole day. Where had Kagome been? The other day I was at home and I have witnesses. How convenient. You don't believe me? Nikolai, it's not about whether I believe you or not. What matters is that she's safe. Well, yeah, who would argue with that? Can you remember anything else that might be important? Or a vault? The old man clearly knew that Kagome's restaurant was being burnt to the ground. No, Kibeshi, nothing for now. But if you remember something, I bid you farewell for the day, but this conversation isn't over yet. You can find the way out. I passed the turnstile, sunk deep in thought, and bumped right into a European-looking man in the district business suit. Excuse me. I didn't go home. Instead, I rushed straight to school. Kagome's business evenings her grudge against Ellie. Did I really suspect her of kidnapping Kobayashi Jun's granddaughter? I don't think she would do something like that, but I don't know. It's not easy to kidnap even the most average person, let alone the heir. Irina was another suspect. Why don't you suspect... I can't even. Why aren't you suspecting the pink-haired girl? I forgot her name. I mean, I'll remember it as soon as they mention it. Finally, the bell rang as soon as the teacher walked out. Fortunately, she'd gone to school day. Let's have a talk. Is everything alright? We're about to find out. I grabbed Kagome by the hand and walked to the hallway. Ellie's been kidnapped. Not here. She hissed at me and walked towards the stairs. Indeed, on the roof we could talk with any witnesses. Cold autumn wind wailed through the ventilation grills, making the place far less cozy than it had been just a couple weeks ago. Ellie's missing. She's been kidnapped. I repeated. Do you know anything about it? Her face didn't even twitch. You sure? Are you trying to suggest that I kidnapped her? You have your reasons. And how would I do that? She smirked and walked to the railing. Well, you were wandering around who knows how long. I've been looking for my dad. Yeah, but for so long. I don't have to report where I go to you. And even if I wanted to, don't you think there were other people with issues with them? Like who, for instance? For instance, Asakura wasn't at school yesterday. Or skipping school a single day isn't grounds for an accusation. I'm not accusing you, but I had a very unpleasant conversation with Kobayashi Jun and he suspects me. You, Nikolai? Kagome scoffed nastily. Yes, but if you're here, you must not be the primary suspect. What else did he tell you? They got a note in which the kidnappers demanded he didn't go to the police and wait further instructions. I don't know. I went to the bench and sat down. Interesting. Interesting what? First you try to help me. My restaurant burns down and now Kobayashi gets kidnapped. If I were you, I'd suspect me too. So, Nikolai, I don't blame you. But think about it. Did I storm into his house in the middle of the day, kill all the guards, tie her up, and carry her away? Do I have Yakuza for accomplices? Or, sorry, that's the limits of my imagination. Maybe you can come with something more believable, Nikolai. I bit my lip and turned away. So, what about Asakura? She would have been easily able to lure Kobayashi somewhere deserted and then... Why would she do that? Perhaps they didn't get along with her. They'd been getting along well before. Meeting you has changed a lot, Nikolai. You have a bad influence on women. She smiled and I grew embarrassed. If they're capable of arson, they might be capable of this too. I still wasn't sure that Kawashima and her friends were to blame for burning down Kagome's restaurant, but decided not to say that out loud. Huh. But the events really were happening at breakneck speed. I wanted to tell him about our problems with them, but I couldn't make up my mind. Well, you should've, she said without a hint of anger. Well, then I'd have to tell him about you and Ellie not getting along. Kagome thought about that. Then maybe you were right not to do it after all. You don't seem to be afraid of him. Not more than the circumstances demand. Why are you smiling? Nothing. Just thinking about that you two have something in common. Really? You're both stubborn and willing to climb over the other people to get to your goal. I don't know who you think I am. It's a joke. Calm down. In any case, being compared to a person like that is flattering. You're welcome. All right. You have a good reason to skip class today, but I need to go. Can I expect you for lunch? Of course. So what, unfortunately? I have to admit that she persuaded me of her innocence. So what is the forecast for tomorrow? I left the school and slowly walk towards my home. I should ask Kagome whether Asakura had been at school. Well, I could ask her during lunch, which I still had to make. What exactly what I did? Shopping always makes you feel better, even if it's only for food. I returned home. In order for Kagome to show her cooking skills, she needed supplies. Strangely enough, Moriki-san's shoes weren't in the hall. I popped in the kitchen and froze. Sitting casually at the table, legs crossed, was Arena. Oh goodness, I thought it was the other girl. Whew. Don't worry, Nikolai, the old man went to the market. I immediately felt relieved. What are you doing here? Aren't you happy to see me? She exclaimed in disappointment. Let's skip the niceties. What a pity. That's what I came here for. I wanted to praise you for a brilliantly conducted operation. Operation? Why, of course. The kidnapping of Kobayashi's granddaughter. Wait, you seriously believe it was me? Who else could it be? Kobayashi-jun wouldn't lie his granddaughter's keeping, would he? So what, is that a reason to suspect me? What do you imagine I pulled that off? That's what I want to hear, with details if you could. She moved forward and rested her chin on the That's nonsense. I started to get angry. The situation had stopped being just strange and was turning into a farce. Nikolai, don't be shy. She began to whine, pretending to be a bimbo student. You know what? I can understand why Kobayashi-jun might expect me, but you? You know that I'm just a normal high schooler. So you're saying you have nothing to do with it? And your new friend, Iwamura, was it, too? Yumi's just a student, same as me. Of course, she has more reason to be upset than me, but if all you needed for revenge was the desire for it, there'd be significantly fewer people on the planet right now. Then why are you being spied on? By who? The Japanese? In a different situation, we wouldn't have risked coming here, but I really want to know how you managed it. I didn't kidnap her! Calm down, there's no need to shout. We might be heard. We'll let them hear, everyone should know I have nothing to hide. What a nice development then, it's no one's fault. It's stupid to suspect the Japanese. The Americans have nothing to do with it, nor us. Who was it then? Flying saucers? Maybe. It did seem pretty strange. I could have just assumed it was an accident, if not for the note. You know about that too? Kobayashi's Jun really wants his granddaughter back. Her actions were too not to notice, so Nikolai, I was sure it was you. And your friend. How much did I really trust Kagome? If you exclude all the other options, then what remains is true, no matter how impregnable. No way I could tell that to Arena, though. You could as well be blaming Asakura and Kawashi's gang, Ellie's school friends. They haven't had the greatest relationship recently. What, really? You can find out yourself. Asakura is from my class, Kawashima's from Ellie's. There are a few others, but they aren't important. And what would they achieve by kidnapping her? What would we achieve by doing that? Well, in the case of your friend, the motive is clear, to get our father back. I don't know the reasons. I don't know anything about the lives of people born with a silver spoon in their mouth. It's a fertile soil for developing your political literacy. Are you serious? Well, Nikolai, I'll think about what you said. She only stood up and looked around, as if trying to find something in my kitchen. As I recall, I can get back into your back alley from your yard. Follow me, please. Once Arena was through the hole in my fence, and out onto the near path, someone had left between the pots of land. I returned to the kitchen and think, someone under surveillance. Kobayashi-jun had made it clear he wasn't going to trust anyone's word when it came to his granddaughter's life. Her life. I really didn't want Ellie to get hurt, or worse. Even if we never saw each other again, I had nothing but deep sympathy for the girl. Maybe it was mutual. Maybe in another life, I'd have taken the chance to take a relationship to another level. But now I had to take care of Kagome and her grandfather, and I could feel the bond getting stronger between us day by day. And if we were criminals, robbing one bank after another, Bonnie and Clyde, not that I had any desire to end up the way they did. Somebody knocked on the door. Kagome's grandfather returned from the market. Hello, where have you been? I was buying groceries, see? You let a perfect stranger in. Oh, you mean that lovely lady from social services? Social services? Well done, Irina. Yeah. She told me we were being compensated for our property burning down and gave me 10,000 yen. Can you believe it? 10,000 yen. I grumbled when we entered the kitchen. Don't you think that's far too little? Well, I was just to have a government remembered us at all. And you weren't surprised that the social worker wasn't Japanese? That did surprise me at first. But she was so nice, polite and nice. I don't doubt it. Moriki-san, Do you know where Kagame's been going lately? She told me he's been looking for her father, but I want to ask if she has any other acquaintances or friends. The old man put the bag on the table and sat in a chair Irina had just occupied 5 minutes ago. He folded his arms like a chess grandmaster thinking of his next moves and started talking. I don't know much about Kagame's life before she'd moved to the restaurant. Her mother divorced Shinji when the girl was young and we'd almost never talked. If it'd been a couple of years later, Kagome and I would have remained strangers. What did her mother die from? Cancer. She was very ill. Maybe it was better to remain silent, but then I'd be seen as heartless. Of course, Kagome talked to her father, but I don't think she ever said anything she needed to move into our place. You see, she and her mother lived in Shirikan, and naturally, such a change of environment can be a shock. In Shirikan? What did Kagome's mother do for work? I don't really know. It was some sort of desk job as far as I remember. Kagome had just started at your school when it happened. The illness was so sudden. You know, son was so young. And she didn't leave anything? If she really used to live in Shirikan, the funeral and other arrangements were handled by Shinji. Maybe like people did nowadays, they lived on tick. Then the only thing Kagome would have inherited would be the adepts. Can't speak. At least now I knew how she ended up at her school. Didn't she tell you anything herself? I don't know. What was her life in Shirikan like? Definitely better than living in an old restaurant by a port. I'm old, Nikolai, but I'm not out of my mind yet. Naturally, even her position wouldn't be comparable to Ellie's, quite possibly. After my parents' death, I hadn't lost much in terms of money, so it's hard for me to imagine what it felt like, not only losing one's mother, but also moving from Shuriken to an old restaurant by the port. At first, she couldn't do a single thing. I marveled at how someone could manage even the simple recipes, but she put in effort and she got better at cooking. That's worthy of respect. But I always knew she was forced to adapt to the new environment. In the beginning, Kagame almost never talked to me and Shinji. He pursed his lips, getting an elusive remembrance to Kagame, as if we were the ones to blame for her mother's death. It's hard to lose a parent. I've gone through it and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. There were many orphans after the war, but back then people saw many things differently. Now you have TVs, telephones, rockets being launched into space, but in our time, people seem to be more genuine and kinder, I suppose. Even when Shinji was little, Gift of Sea was built by my father at the turn of the century, and in a sense, my entire life has been spent in that restaurant. I don't know who would need me now or why. I had nothing to say for the second time, and started feeling uncomfortable. Kagame had returned from school. Oh, you bought groceries, perfect. Kagame opened the fridge and found it was full already. Are you preparing for war or what? Moriyuki seemed to be trapped in the memories of his past, and couldn't quite switch from that difficult conversation to daily life. I'll leave you young ones alone, the old man said, not addressing anyone in particular. Stood up with an effort and walked to his room. What was kept him? Nostalgia. What were you talking about? Nothing in particular. Nikolai? She frowned. Oh, at lunch. I was about to start cooking but forgot. How did you live without me? Himitsu. I don't know, I just managed to remember the name. I was sitting in the same spot, thoughtfully watching Kagame make lunch. I couldn't get her grandfather's story out of my head. But I also had to inform her about Irina's visit. Do you remember what I said about that woman from the KGB? She didn't turn around, but the knife in her hand lost some of its speed. She was here today. So, she thinks it was me who kidnapped Ellie. Kagame laughed sardonically. But you? I was ready for that reaction. So the KGB suspects us. I tried to persuade Irina that I have nothing to do with it. What about me? Well, I put in a good word for you too. How courteous of you, Nikolai. Of course, I would have preferred to be sure she was actually innocent. And what should we expect from her? I don't know. Well, you know her, not me. Saying I know her is an overstatement. You get what I'm talking about. On the other hand, Irina had a point. What? No matter who you pick, the Russians, the Japanese, the Americans, it seems like nobody's to blame, but Ellie has still been kidnapped. What about our friends? Did you mention them? Nikolai? I did. Maybe Irina will manage to dig out something that others haven't. Excellent. Kagome said with deep satisfaction. Oh, your grandfather let Irina in, took her money, and went off to the market, leaving her alone here. I'll talk to him, she replied calmly, if you'd be so kind. Why do all Japanese girls have such strange bone structure? Also, Mariki told me a bit about your mother. Did he? Yeah, I'm sorry. My parents died immediately. I didn't have to watch them suffer day after day. It was a long time ago. And you used to live in Shuriken? That was also a long time ago. He said he used to be really bad at cooking. That I found the hardest to believe. If you're happy with my food, don't eat it. It'll be easier for me. I'm happy with anyone's cooking as long as I don't have to cook myself. Kagome suddenly drew herself from making lunch. You know, Nikolai, if you ever want to compliment a girl, don't say anything like that. Yeah, and you're an expert on compliments. I laughed for no reason. Maybe I was different when I lived in Shuriken. How would you know? Were you? What if? The water boiled, so she had to go back to cooking. It was hard for me to imagine her used to be different. We often smirk when we hear something along the lines of, I was slim when I was young. Can you ever imagine that fat slob as a fit young man? Could I imagine Kagome as a talkative, friendly, cheerful girl? And most importantly, could she have changed so drastically in only a couple years? On the other hand, if it was true, then I could somewhat better understand her dislike for Ellie. Do you miss it? Sure, Ken, those times. Nostalgia is counterproductive. Do you only do things that are productive? I cleaned it up. You know, we have a saying that broken dishes are good luck. And we say that a broken plate is a loss. Your place is so dirty, Nikolai. Seriously, it feels like we're living in a stable. May I clean up after dinner? May you? I repeated. So I can say no? It's your house. Alright, you may, but I'll help. As long as you're out of my way. She smiled. We ate and then started to clean the house. We spent a while searching for the vacuum cleaner since I didn't know where Himitsu left it. My entire life since I moved to Japan. And you don't remember where anything is in your own house? Well, you see, I don't do all this stuff myself often. So you have servants too? Something like that. I grew tired and sweaty almost immediately. How did Himitsu manage to run around with a mop and rag the whole day and never get tired? Kagome turned out to be more prepared for housework. A restaurant must always be kept clean, she said with pride, and I had no reason not to believe her. That's true. Something as simple as cleaning suddenly caused me to feel a surge of positive emotions. I was disgusted to admit it, but for a short time I began to feel not completely useless. Kagome seemed happy. She clearly enjoyed anything she could do well. You're practically glowing, you know. Kagome was mopping the floor around the fridge, raised her head and looked at me in surprise. Hopefully not because you got an exposed wire somewhere here. When we were finished, I was so exhausted that I fell to the floor next to the kokatsu. Thanks for helping, Nikolai. No, thank you. Well then, time for dinner. I noted, surprised that she still had the energy to cook but didn't say anything out loud. Dinner was delicious as always. It's also about the feedback. Most people want immediate results and aren't willing to wait and bear the discomfort. I remember my mother telling me something about that. But if good advice could change a person's behavior by now, humanity would be colonizing the solar system instead of wasting time with pointless internal conflicts. That's an understatement. Kagome, your cooking's better than usual. What did you add to the curry? Bit of sweet pepper. Wonderful. I'll have to remember that. He turned to me and squinted slyly. Nikolai, you're a good influence like Kagome-chan. Grandfather. I forced myself to wash the dishes, then we just sat at the table resting, while Moriki walked out to the yard and fell asleep there. The peaceful atmosphere at home was definitely making me comfortable, but at the same time seemed somehow unnatural, as if we were in the eye of the storm. Are you worried about something? Of course I am, aren't you? I'm just trying to appreciate the moment while it's here. Good for you. Did you hear that? Yes. Are you expecting guests? Yeah, throwing a party. When I had last thought of Himitsu, I couldn't remember, but she was our late guest. Good evening. Her forced politeness raised a red flag. Yeah, hi. Has something happened? That's what I want to ask you. What about me? You know, I know that Iwamura-senpai is living with you now. You do, huh? Can I come in? Sure. Yeah, I definitely feel like she's the cause of all this. So, we're gonna end things off here with her suddenly showing up at our house. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. As always, goodbye.